Hello and welcome to 60OF Reviews. So today we're here to basically give you, this is Doc next to me.
Hello.
And I am Omar. And today we're here to give you our long-awaited review of Thief. What's the subtitle for it? I forgot.
Legacy of Shadow. Thief VR Legacy of Shadow.
There you go. Thief VR Legacy of Shadows. We initially postponed our review when the game was launching because it was buggy as hell, and we figured, we heard from the developers that the first patch would release, would fix everything magically, and then we were a couple of days later we were told that actually the second patch is going to, fix whatever everything the first everything patch didn't fix. So anyway, here we are, 2 patches later into the game, and we figured it's finally time to give you our full review of Thief Legacy of Shadows VR.
Sure. Well, I was really excited and not a little trepidatious about this because I've loved Thief games since they were released in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And Thief pretty much invented stealth games. A lot of stealth tropes that we know now came from the original Thief games, and of course co-created by Warren Spector, who was also very famous for creating Deus Ex, and it came out of that wellspring of like very intelligent decisions made by very intelligent people that have sort of defined how that genre has evolved. And they were brilliant. The first 2 Thief games were superb. They now look quite dated. The third one I loved equally as much, and looked a lot better. That was a generational leap. But Thief, I think it's 2016, 2014, 2016, whenever it was. The rebooted version of Thief was the most aggressively 6 out of 10 experience I think possible. It was in development hell for a while, and it was too many cooks spoiled the broth and made it a little bit generic. So Thief kind of lost its identity. So this comes out, and I basically begged you for the chance to me to review it because I'm a fan of the series.
No, sir.
And I've never quite played anything like it. I feel like I've been on this crazy roller coaster ride since I saw the first adverts. I didn't know what to think, but I was quietly optimistic. I thought, well, you wouldn't do another Thief game unless you had a solid plan, I don't think.
This game, I don't know how it compares to the mechanics of old games because I don't remember them at all, even whatever I played. But it starts off really strong. I think we all agreed on that. Me, you, and Pete, we all agreed that it starts off really strong. The first 2 levels are impressive, both graphically from a quest point of view. The graphics look really good for Quest. The gameplay looked like it had sort of a cool approach where, you've got some puzzles to solve, you've got some stealth, you can also get into action with the combat. You can, parry attacks and then, whack the guy on the head and he'll sort of get dizzy first and then you whack him again and he loses consciousness, and you can hide the bodies in the shadows. You've got a detector on your hand, on the back of your hand, basically back of your palm, and it shows you whether you're in light or not.
More or less light.
More exactly. I was just gonna say more on that later. And initially, the first 2 levels are impressive. You're going about, you're solving some puzzles. The graphics are good. There seems to be a lot of different ways to approach the gameplay. Something again, Warren Spector games, whatever we're known for, and now I think that legacy has sort of been taken over by Arcane Studios to some extent with their what's it called, franchise?
Dishonored is
Dishonored. There you go.
Yeah.
It sort of carries over that sort of style where your approach to solving things is a little bit open. You're not so much guided as you are given world mechanics and world systems, and you're sort of trying to operate within those. So on that level, it seems interesting, and then you get to the second level at some point later in the second level. We're not counting the tutorial as a level, so we're talking about the rest of the levels. There's 6 levels overall, but one of them kind of repeats. It's the same level. You revisit it, so count it as you will. But basically, you get to you get to that level, and at some point there's this puzzle, and it's a bookcase puzzle, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't working for Doc. It wasn't working for me. And then we basically found out that, okay, if you restart the game at a checkpoint, more on that later, if you restart the game at a checkpoint, it sometimes fixes the bookcase puzzle. So great, we both managed to restart the game, dealing with whatever checkpoint it landed us on, and we got past that. And then we got into the third level of the game, which exhibits a very dramatic frame drop. A frame drop which in Doc's case made him feel the game was completely unplayable, and in my case made me feel,
Doesn't smell.
This is on the Quest. We have to...
On the Quest, yeah.
On the Quest version.
On the Quest.
The third level proper.
The third level proper. Suddenly the frame rate just collapses, and in Doc's case the collapse was I mean, we can't really compare how it feels, but in his case he felt that it made the game unplayable, and in my case it meant that I could play but I wasn't happy about it, and I felt a little bit queasy. So it starts making you not feel so good playing it, and then I decided I will persevere. And during this time, they did release the first patch, which was initially, promised to, it's going to fix everything. But it didn't fix everything. We felt that there was a catch to it just because of how nebulous that phrasing and all-encompassing. It was nebulous and all-encompassing. And we sort of like, okay, let's see how this plays out. So the first patch comes out, and we played the game, and I persevered through it. And they also said that that first patch was supposed to solve all the problems with the bookcase. It says so in the patch release notes. It's not like I'm doing anything secretive here. It says so in the patch notes, but it's supposed to fix what they said was a rare bookcase problem. But this rare problem, it happened to me, it happened to Doc, it happened to Pete. So, I don't know how rare it is when it's happening 100% of the time. But in any case, so dealt with the bookcase puzzle, went on to the third level, and again, the incredible frame drop at the third level was not very comfortable. Persevered through that, and there's a second bookcase puzzle in the third level, the one with the incredible frame drop. But this case, it was a different problem with the bookcase, but it was still a problem with the bookcase level. And in my case, it was basically that you're supposed to find these free books, and there's a piece of paper that you find at some point that explains to you the free books. And I was like, the book that I'm missing, I seem to have already found, so I don't understand what's going on. Finally, after about an hour of struggling with the game and restarting every once in a while, I'm restarting every once in a while because I'm thinking maybe it's like the previous bookcase issue where restarting will put me back to the checkpoint and fix the puzzle. So I'm restarting a few times to try to fix it, and every time I restart, sometimes the checkpoint system, which again they said was fixed with the first patch, sometimes it would restart me like where I had reached the level, but sometimes it's restarting me way early, and this is a problem that persists across the levels. So eventually it turned out that the reason I couldn't find the Book of Judgment is that there were two books labeled the Book of Inquisitions. So one of the labels just didn't exist. So I ended up with, two similarly named books and one differently named book, and that's how I solve the puzzle. So, again, it's kind of, you want to call that broken? I would call it broken. Okay. But basically you continue to go on, and there are some gameplay things that are just, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the systems work, sometimes they don't. Like climbing ladders. Sometimes I'll climb to the top of a ladder, I'll shift to the side so that I can get off the ladder, and sometimes it works and I'm on the new platform. Sometimes it'll just drop me straight down off the ladder, and I have to climb up the ladder 2 or 3 times. Now, when you're trying to be a stealthy thief while there's guards and spotlights and whatever, and the game is just fighting against you every step of the way, it doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good. You're not having an immersive experience. You're fighting against the game. You're fighting against a game that is constantly just pushing against you, and because of things that are broken. There are some windows that you can very easily climb out of. You can either push forward or you grab it and you push the thumbnail forward, and it sort of, you mount across and get out of a window. And again, in some places this works perfectly and smoothly, and you can, make your way around, nicely. But in other places, it doesn't work at all. And there are parts of the game where I'm spending like 1 or 2, 3 minutes trying to get out of a window. Like, okay, you want to break my immersion completely? You've done it. Success. The graphics look good. The game is atmospheric. The biggest problem with the graphics might be the fact that everything is a little too bright. And it sort of destroys, which is what Doc was going to get to at some point, it destroys this whole notion that you're operating in the shadows. Because despite it not looking so dark, there are points in the game where I'm literally standing right in front of a guard, but as far as the game is concerned, I'm in shadow. And because I'm in shadow, even though I'm standing right in front of the guard and I can see him clearly, and there's no way in hell he wouldn't be able to see me clearly, I'm literally 1 foot away. You're probably going to be seeing footage on screen right now of me standing right in front of the guard and waving my arms in his face, and he can't see me. I'm not detectable for some reason. And so, the graphics look good, but the way they intersect with the functionality of the stealth doesn't work.
It's fascinating to me that you'd say that, having only played the Quest version, because the Quest version is noticeably darker than the PS
PlayStation
VR2. Now, they've got like HDR on all the time on the PSVR, and what that does is it washes everything out and makes everything appear brighter, and you can't change the brightness levels. You cannot change the gamma at all. So the PSVR2 version is so much brighter that it basically feels like broad daylight sometimes. I think what happened personally is the Quest version led development, right? So there aren't any graphical options on the PSVR2. There aren't any graphical options on the PC version, which is capable of a lot more. So a lot of the lighting effects are kind of baked in rather than being real time. Now, this has the result of it nominally looks best, I think, on Quest, because the blacks are deeper, and it's been optimized, at least in terms of fidelity, for the Quest. But in the PlayStation, that feeling that you're experiencing, sort of being stood in front of a guard, on PlayStation, it's nothing short of ridiculous, because most of the time it feels like you stood there like that, and the guy's looking straight at you, and which marries, and it's hard to break this down into gameplay, graphics, because that feeds through to everything. So the AI, the pathfinding of the guards, is so simplistic and ridiculous that it's so easy to break the game. It just feels like if you in a game which should be about exploration and finding out different ways to do things, it encourages you to try different play styles. If you don't play it very prescriptively and sort of do your bit to act along how they've decided you should act, then the whole game falls apart. And this idea of stood in front of a guard and he can't see you, whereas sometimes they'll kind of see you from seemingly across the level and then chase you until you do something really clever, like climb up a ladder so they can't chase you.
Suddenly you're gone.
It takes all of the goodwill that you might feel in the first half an hour to an hour, and then slowly just goes, oh, well, no, you can't do that, and no, that doesn't work properly.
Yeah.
And it's all there in the shadow issue for me. What's the point of a thief game? It's called Legacy of Shadow. If your idea of the Legacy of Shadow is to brighten it up, then you've missed an intrinsic part of what makes that experience, especially in VR. It's so much more obvious than if you're playing a game flat. It's an immersion breaking thing and there's so many immersion breaking things with this game that I can't believe nobody pointed it out or sorted it out before it was shown to the wider press, the wider public or the press or whatever. Really weird. And that graphical thing where it looks great and it's going to look great on some of the videos, but then it sort of isn't. It's so disappointing.
Yeah. Audio, how do you feel about the audio?
So it's really good that they brought Stephen Russell back as Garrett, but the game opens with the worst old lady acting I think I've ever heard in a mainstream release. Oh, it was the dawn of whatever. Just really embarrassing. And so I have my 11-year-old son in the room when I started the PSVR2 version, and he just went, "Oh God!" at the opening narration. Now it improves after that. I think there's a lot of guard chatter that's brilliant. I think the actual ambient sound is pretty good.
The ambient sound I thought was good. The music is all right. The music
is all right, although I can't remember any of it. It does its job. I think that one of the biggest weaknesses it has is there could be a little bit more directional audio. So you could, for footsteps, and because sometimes you get guards talking over one another and it just sounds like they're next to each other.
I found the directional audio weird because on the one hand, there is audio that feels very directional, but it doesn't always it's not always consistent with reality.
No,
you'll hear a voice that sounds like it's from there, but then you can open that door. Like sometimes I'm hiding behind a door, I'm lock picking it, and I'm about to go in, and I'm thinking there's somebody going to be behind that door because I can hear somebody talking behind that door. But there is walking to the door, and it's just an empty room, and I'm like, where was that voice coming from? So the directional audio is there, but it's not coherent with the reality that the game is constructing around you spatially. So I found that very weird. Like it happened to me many times where I'm literally behind the door and I'm thinking I'm gonna, this is not a good time to go in, so I'm kind of sneaking in, trying to peek, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna get caught because any half sane NPC in a room, when they see a door getting open, maybe they're gonna be suspicious. But as we find out more and more in the game, nothing makes these guards suspicious unless you throw a dinosaur in their face. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. But yeah, the audio is the soundtrack is kind of good. The voice acting, some of it is good. The music I thought was all right, but the directional audio is not functional. At least not the way it should be.
And if you do things in a different order, then sometimes it will still give you the audio cues as if you haven't done it, and it's really irritating. It still does it post-patch. So on one level, Garrett kept saying in my ear, oh, well, that bookcase means something. And I'd done the bookcase puzzle. There's nothing,
It seems to be location-based, not trigger-based, depending on what you've done and what you haven't. It's not action-based, it seems to be location-based.
And that's really irritating because it feels...
not a choice.
I think as the game goes on, and you've played at this point, I think you've played it to completion, which I haven't.
Yeah,
around about the time now, the frame rate doesn't tank on that third proper level. It doesn't like on the PSVR2 version. The frame rate is more consistent. But what does happen is that you get the feeling that the game has completely run. It's like played its last card. And that it's just given you a bigger level to do the same stuff in, and because it doesn't have, it doesn't really have a functional tool set. The AI is not at all interesting, and it's considerably more basic than the stuff in the original Thief game, or just basic on its own terms. Then it just starts to run out of steam. And this is, I don't know how. I think there are 2 more levels after that, 2 or 3.
Yeah, overall, it's like 6 levels if you don't count the story.
Which is not.
And again, like I said, one of them is a repeat. You visit the same location. We've mentioned some of the issues, like the bookcase puzzles that are broken, the checkpoint system that are broken and that were supposed to be fixed but are still not quite fixed, because I've played it after even the second patch and I still had those problems. And then there's the issue about the mantling and the ladders and windows. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The checkpoint system, which again, it doesn't is inconsistent even on the 4th or 5th level. There's a place where I got there was a puzzle that I
kill the power.
I'll get to that right now. There's a puzzle where I wasn't sure if the game was broken or if I was doing something wrong, so I would go and reload the last checkpoint and it would take me back to the beginning of the level. And I'm like, why why are you taking me back to the beginning of the level? I've accomplished so many things since then. But it brings us to, again, this point, it brings us to the thing that we've been sort of circling around the start, and I think we should tackle head on, which is there's with puzzle games and with games in general, especially with puzzle games and stealth games and things like this, that it's vital that you trust the game.
Yep.
It is absolutely fatal if you don't trust the game. Because when you're if you're solving a puzzle, you need to trust that the game isn't broken. I'm not failing because the game is broken. I should be failing because there's something I didn't figure out. And at some point, I literally don't know. I don't know if I've missed something or if the game is broken. And I keep restarting because I think maybe the game's broken. Why do I think the game's broken? Because it's demonstrated to me several times that it is. And I really think this erosion of trust is the biggest problem with the game. I'm playing a game that I don't trust. I don't trust the systems. I don't trust the mechanics. I don't trust that when something isn't working, that it's not me. It's the game. That it's not the game. It's me. I don't trust that anymore.
Yeah.
And for me, that's absolutely like it's crippling for the game. It's crippling for the game for me not to trust it. I don't trust it. What I also have had is I've had a situation where, for example, there's a guard who's got a key that I need. So I'll go and I'll take down the guard. He's napping. I search him. There's no key. Okay. I reload the checkpoint. Hey, guess what? Presto. Now he's got a key. So like, come on, guys. Come on. The fact that the game is so broken that you end up systematically defaulting to reloading the checkpoint whenever you can't solve a puzzle because you're thinking this is going to fix the game.
What I'm owed.
That's horrific. That's absolutely horrific. And it shouldn't be happening in a game with this kind of a franchise reputation. It shouldn't be happening to Thief.
I genuinely didn't think that anybody making a Thief game could let this stuff through for release. And so that trust thing on Quest, you've got a 2-hour refund window. Most of the problems that become very apparent with Thief happen after. It's very feasible that you will get them after the 2-hour mark, particularly the frame rate tanking. Because if you, like, I went back and replayed the intro level 3 times because I enjoyed it so much and I wanted to do it sort of 100% it, So by the time I would have got to
I'll interrupt you just briefly because we've mentioned the frame tanking on the 3rd level several times, and I do have to tell people that after that level, the frame rate does pretty much return to normal for the rest of the game. So it's just this 3rd level in the game where the frame drops dramatically and then it gets better. I don't know if it gets exactly back to the first frame rate of the first 2 levels, but at least it recovers. So please continue.
Well, no, that's an important point to make because we have a slightly different experience of it. Now, I would say that I have very strong VR legs generally, and if there's a vignette or any comfort options going, I'll switch all of those off. And when the frame rate started tanking at 3rd level, I genuinely couldn't get past it on Quest. And if you're saying that that's intact, but if you get through it, it gets better. I mean, it really isn't the sort of thing that we should be talking about on a mainstream holiday release. And so part of this process is it sort of destroys the trust, as you quite rightly point out. I think it's absolutely puzzle games, stealth games. There are very basic mechanics at play in Thief VR, more basic than the original Thief games. So for them to have basic mechanics and then not be reliable makes it feel it's worse than this kind of Fisher Price My First Stealth Game affair that you might think, because at least that would work if it was solid in a kind of plasticky way. I loved they've got this new thing where you can punch a guard in the back of the legs and he'll crumple and you bonk him on that. It's fantastic, and there's some really good ideas at play, but they just haven't followed through to them being consistent and reliable. I mean, if I was a civilian VR consumer, this would have been on my list this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thief VR for Christmas, and if I didn't have a headset, it would have been the same as Assassin's Creed was, which you should, if you haven't got that, you should buy instead. By the way, because it's what Assassin's Creed is one of those things that's very much influenced by Thief, but Assassin's Creed VR works as you would expect and hope and want it to, but this one is.
It starts very strong, because I remember at some point the developers got in touch with us and they were disappointed with our mini review on the Meta Store, and they were citing as evidence all the other reviews that were saying how great the game was. And my response to that was, how far have they played? Because the game got released yesterday. So I'm not surprised that a lot of people who played the first couple of levels, since, at the time we were having a conversation, it was like the day before the game had been released. And I was like, I'm not surprised. If you had asked me how I felt about this game 2 hours into playing it, I would have said it's fantastic. I remember when we first started playing the game, we were talking about pretty high scores. We were trading, gut feelings. What's your gut score? And our gut scores were pretty damn high. This would have been one of our top scoring games. And then it just sabotaged itself consistently, constantly, until it just kept going down and down and down and down, sabotaging itself, sabotaging the trust between you and the game, and just leading to where we are now. It's insane. We've seen it happen a few times. It happened with Wander, Fragments of Fate. It happened with Thief now, and there was another game that it happened with. I don't remember which one we were talking about at some point. And the games
Reach. Was it Reach?
Reach. Again, it has all the foundations of a really fantastic game. These are games that should have easily been, up in the 8.5s and 9s, but they sabotage themselves. They sabotage. I don't know if it's release schedules. I don't know if it's developers. Like in some cases, sometimes the developers aren't the same as the publishers, and maybe the publishers are pushing the developers to release early, and so the developers have to resort to, okay, day one patch, day whatever patch, and whatever. And on Quest, apparently, you can't really have a day one patch because it takes a few days to approve a release, like a patch. So what was called the day one patch initially was released like 4 or 5 days after the game was out. In the case of Thief, 5 days or something. And in all honesty, it's none of our business. If a game's ready to release, if it's ready to collect your money as a paying customer, then it's ready for review. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that a game's getting released before it's ready to be reviewed. I mean, that notion is just topsy-turvy.
I completely agree. But I do think that Thief is slightly different from the other games that we can say. I mean, this has been the year of that. I mean, it really, for VR, there have been these big things. Wanderer Reach is a really good example of a game that just needs longer to cook, but it is, and when it's patched and it works like it should do, will be amazing. Right. Yeah. Whereas Thief, I said, I think it was, I think it was probably this time last week. Anyway, but just before release, and we were pondering what to do about it, I remember thinking, and I did say, as you pointed out, I said this would be like an 8.5 easily if they sorted out all of the problems with it. And our collective experiences with the game and the underlying problems with it and the lack of sort of ambition that it reveals later on, I've completely changed my mind now. This is a game that I initially thought, I was reviewing it, and I thought this is going to an 8.5, and if they patch these issues, I can see this being 8.5, and we are currently compiling our 6 DOF greatest single player experiences, and what I said, this should be, if this continues like this, it should be on the and I've completely changed my mind. Not because of the bugs, not because we're never ever going to give anything the benefit of the doubt again. But even if they sorted everything out and it worked mechanically as it is intended to, this is no more like its predecessor, Thief 2016. This is like a 5-6 out of 10 kind of experience. It's short and it's kind of unambitious, and it just lacks any kind of end game finesse. Yeah. But you said this before me. I know I'm usually the bad cop on 6DOF, right? But you, having completed the game, you decided we should give it
overall just 4 out of 10. Very disappointing, and we're not happy about it because we were initially very excited and we were hoping that we would really be enjoying this game. I was loving it at the beginning. So was Doc. So was Pete. We were all loving it at the beginning, and then it just there you go. And Pete's in a, like, after the 3rd level, Pete doesn't even want to finish it anymore. He's also given up on it. I just persevered because I figured we need to, but yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, if you've enjoyed me and Omar completely drubbing on Thief VR Legacy of Shadow, we don't do that to every game, and we don't do a lot of our reviews in this format. But if we are trying to grow the channel, and we always have been, we're not making any money from this. We're just doing it for the love of it. But it would be nice if we got like a wider audience. So it'll take you no time at all. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. It makes the world of difference to us. And we are dedicated to saving you money on disappointing shite VR games, and also rewarding those that really deserve your attention. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.